The Spurs resumed the 2026 rodeo road trip with a stop in Detroit. And let's take a look at inside the current win streak.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Monday. Welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for KENS 5 San Antonio. As always, I'm glad to have y'all back. Thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first and only spot for all things silver and black. We appreciate it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You want to go check out FanDuel right now. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. What are we talking about today? Well, you're seeing your screen if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're not, we're looking at tonight's game. Spurs-Pistons. Road trip continues. It resumes. This time, they got no pushover tonight. It's the East-leading Pistons. We're going to get into some numbers, keys to the game, what the Spurs got to do to get the W and continue that win streak. And speaking of the win streak, we're going to take a look inside the win streak. We're going to look at some numbers. What is the eye test telling us? How are the players vibing right now? What's the feel right now? Why are they having so much success of late? We're going to do that and more with our guest, and we're back on a regular schedule program. You know, it's Monday, and you know who that means. That means Mr. Matt Guzman with Spurs on Sports Illustrated. It's Mondays with Matt right here on Locked On Spurs. Matt, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry, my voice is still a little bit shot, but glad to be here.
My voice is a little shot too. In the Moody Center, it felt like we had to raise up our volume because it was such a small arena.
See, well, y'all missed it because Jeff was screaming and he was going crazy. He was being a fan on Media Row the whole time.
I was never doing that. Never, ever doing that. But Matt, yeah, it was good to meet up with you in Austin. Check out those pair of Spurs games. And are you feeling better? Because the last time I saw you a few days ago, you said you're feeling sick.
Yeah, definitely feeling hoping to continue that trend as we head over to New York so I can go do those games without issue.
There you go. All right. Check him out on X at MattGZMAN as I clear my throat real quick. Matt, let's go ahead and get into it right now. Spurs rodeo trip resumes tonight in Detroit, and they're playing, they're probably one of the toughest outs they've had on this road trip. It is the Detroit Pistons, the number one team in the Eastern Conference. Matt, what do you want to do first? Look at the tail of the tape first. Should we start off with that? See how these two teams match up? All right, Matt, there we have it. The tail of the tape right there. As you can tell, if numbers don't lie, then this game should be very good. Points per game, almost dead even. Look at that. I mean, percentage points away. How about opponent defense? Again, two top defensive teams going at each other. Two top offensive teams, Matt. Two top defensive teams, as you can see on your screen right now. What about holding teams from the field goal? Just sending them down away from the rim. Again, tight. Spurs rank 7th in that department. And opponent field goal percentage at fourth, while the Pistons are 2nd in the NBA in opponent field goal percentage at 44.2. Matt, I got a feeling tonight's going to be a slugfest. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think what sticks out most to me from the Pistons side of things is just how, and obviously having, this whole season has been proof. Their defense has been incredible, especially forcing turnovers, forcing steals, getting in transition. It's one of the things that they do best, and so you look at the numbers right there and it tells you that right there. But, when you look at what the Spurs have been able to do and some of the things that they've struggled with, when teams are really good at forcing turnovers, that can easily be a trap that they can fall into. Obviously, they fared pretty well against the Thunder.
Yeah.
We're also really good about doing that. But, if they're not careful, they could definitely give the ball away a little bit more than maybe they've been, especially on this win streak. And that could definitely be something dangerous for them.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the Spurs side of things, what makes me worried about tonight's game is, again, Detroit's defense. You look up and down. If the Spurs, for some reason, start knocking down their threes, well, great. You're only playing the 5th best opponent three field goal percentage defensive team in the league right now, as you can see on your screen. The Pistons whole team's about 35% shooting from the 3 line there. Other areas of concern for me, if I'm San Antonio, is, well, maybe I should say concern, it's more of a benefit. And what I mean by that is the Pistons, man, look at that number down there. Turnovers. They're dead last in the NBA, nearly dead last at 23. They cough up the ball a lot. I think that's where the Spurs can take advantage of the Pistons, get out in transition, make the Pistons pay for their mistakes. Seeing your screen, Spurs pretty good at minimizing turnovers, just about 13 a game. But again, go back to that defense. Who creates more turnovers? It's the Pistons. They're the number one team in that department. They cause 17 turnovers per game, while the Spurs, 25th, Matt. I mean, Matt, you look up and down these numbers right now, and do you think this is going to be a close game, or do you think because Pistons have the defensive edge, if your numbers don't lie, there you have it, that it could be a long night for the Spurs?
I think it could be a long night, but I also don't think that means it'll be a blowout. It's funny what we just watched, you and I, on Media Row, and on Austin was a Kings team without three of its best players putting up a fight against the Spurs. So I think the Spurs are at a point, especially with the momentum that they're riding, they're not going to just roll over against any team. But to your point, kind of what we've been getting at, this team there's a reason the Pistons have the best record in the league right now, even better than OKC. They've been dominating their opponents. They've been generating amazing defense and forcing turnovers. Cade Cunningham has looked amazing. Obviously, when Jalen Duren just got his first All-Star nod and very deservingly. And so I think this team is really clicking. And, when you go to Detroit on the road against one of the teams that has found the most success in the NBA this season, you're bound to be due for a long night unless things are going perfectly in your favor.
I'm glad you mentioned Jalen Duren because, surprise, surprise, everybody, in recent history, it's not Cade Cunningham that does the most damage to San Antonio in the meetings. It's actually Duren. He's averaging 19.4 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, and about a block a game in 5 career games against San Antonio. He even dropped a 30-point, 17 assists with 4 block game back on February 2023. Oh, and he followed that up with a 21 and 15 performance in the second meeting in 2025, February 2025. Brace yourself, everybody. This is his highest scoring average against any team in the league. He loves playing against the Spurs. I'm hoping Wemby can have an answer for that because did you know, Matt, Wemby has never recorded a block against the Pistons in his career.
There's some weird, funky stats because I remember when Cade played last year, I think towards the end of the season against the Spurs.
Yeah. It
was the first time that Cade had played in a game.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of strange to me, but I feel like Victor's due for one. That's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, and it's not just simply Cade and Duren. And I don't think Stewart is playing right. I think he's still serving that suspension.
Right.
Yeah, so Spurs don't have to worry about him. But you even look at Tobias Harris. He's averaging about 18 points per game, nearly 6 rebounds, and nearly 5 assists in his career against the Spurs. So this team can present the Spurs problems, or at least these players definitely get up for San Antonio. And this is interesting. We know Wemby does damage, so, yay, go Wemby, go. But did you know also, too, that Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson also get up for the Pistons game? Devin Vassell, start off with him. He's averaging about 13 points in 7 career games against the Pistons, while Keldon averages 15 points and about 4 rebounds in his career versus Detroit. So the Spurs definitely can bring that heat back to the Pistons for as much as the Pistons give the Spurs problems. Just real quick, everybody, the Pistons are on a 2-game winning streak versus San Antonio. So hopefully the Spurs can break that losing skid and continue their winning streak. Man, this one's tough, Matt. When I looked at the Rodeo road trip, this is the game that I had penciled in as perhaps the first L in the road trip. What do you think the Spurs are going to have to do to avoid that?
Well, I think they're going to have to lean into something that they've been working on all season, which is, as you mentioned earlier, keeping turnovers low.
Yeah.
That's in years past, and towards the beginning of this year, even that was something they struggled with, especially with Steph was still learning the ropes of being a facilitating point guard. And so I think if they're able to kind of keep things close to the vest, if they can counteract some of those really, really strong perimeter defenders, on-ball defenders that Detroit's throwing, then I think that they can find a way to keep their rhythm going, and obviously ride the momentum and the offense that they've been generating as of late.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing Castle and perhaps Cade going at each other. I think that will be a fun matchup. That's the matchup I'm watching. I'm also watching Duran and Wemby. Duran, he's a big boy, man. He's strong. So we know that stronger physical players tend to get under the skin of Wemby. I expect Duran to do the same thing. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, so much more. Plus, they got features like early payouts and flex pay, so you basically got options while the games are still happening. You'll download the app. You'll be surprised how easy it is to use to get started. It's going to take a couple minutes, and then you're going to build your first lineup. You can even make lineups around players that you already follow, picking more or less on points and assists. Honestly, makes every position way more fun to watch. It's available in all 50 states. Just easy for just about anyone to jump in, and you'll love the social feature where you can see what other people are playing, copy lineups with one click. It's a cool way to learn and build better picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups and play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access to ad-free audio feed for Locked On Spurs, compatible with Apple's Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. An invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for just listeners of this show and, well, hanging out with a lot of other fans on Discord. You want to go to this website right now, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub. Go there right now, or just tap the link in the show notes to learn more. But overall, I mean, this Pistons team is it's loaded, man. I mean, we know the usual suspects, but they got Oscar Thompson. We mentioned Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson. Here's a guy that can get hot from the 3 line. And we know players love to get hot against the Spurs from the 3 line in recent history. And of course, Cade Cunningham. Now, some other little notes here. The Pistons are 6-2 at home versus the Western Conference teams. So at least in those 8 games are well above 500. So keep that in mind. Matt, oh man. Whew. I'm going to go on the limb. I think the Spurs get this W. I'll back it up in a while when we get to the win streak. But I think in this win streak, the Spurs, we know what the numbers are. We'll get into that in a bit. But they're playing with an edge in the sense of they feel they can walk on that court and get a win. They can get a win. They feel like they're on a mission. They don't want the winning streak to end, obviously. And Matt, I think they're catching perhaps the Pistons at a bad time because of the fallout from the fight. They're not going to have Stewart, one of their primary weapons. I know that's not enough to lessen the talent because they have a deep talent. I mean, let's look at the screen again, Matt. I'm going to bring it up again. If I can pull it up here for everybody to see. I mean, look how deep they are. I mean, you look at it, blocks per game. They're actually first in the NBA. That's how deep they are defensively. I think the Spurs get this one. As crazy as that may sound, despite what all the numbers are showing me, I just think what I'm seeing in this current win streak is showing me that this team is going to get up to playing big teams. We know they have issues playing down to sub-500 teams, but when it comes to the big boys of the league, they get up for it. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say Spurs get the win. What do you think?
It's rare for me that I can't sit here and think, I think they can go and do that one. And I'm not saying that I don't think they can, because I do think they're more than capable, as you mentioned, especially with the win streak kind of basketball that they're playing right now. But I don't know if I can sit here and predict a win.
Wow.
I think I'm
interesting.
I've really, really liked what I've seen from Detroit this year. which is crazy, because we were talking to some of the guys after the game about, when these two teams met each other 2 years ago in this time, they had a combined 8 wins or something crazy.
Right.
So for both franchises to be in a position that they're in now, especially with Detroit, it was funny because I knew that they were having a really good year, but I think it was at one point the NBA just posts its weekly, like, hey, here's how the standings are looking after this week. And I saw the Pistons with the best record above the Thunder, and I was shocked. I knew they were having a good year, but to that level is kind of crazy to me. I feel like at some point the Spurs are going to get tested on this road trip, and it's only going to get harder from here. And tonight is definitely going to be, if not the hardest games on their stretch. And I don't know. I don't know if I can sit here and say I think they're going to win. I also don't think that they're going to get blown out, but I do think that they're going to have a hard time sticking in it, maybe in the fourth quarter, when things kind of really start to when the teams are beginning to separate. I don't know if it's going to be the Spurs that are going to be the ones, playing from ahead this time.
Well, the Pistons come into tonight's game 42-13, while the Spurs are 40-16, riding an 8-game win streak. More on that in a few minutes here. I just think the Spurs, what I'm seeing in the win streak right now, is showing me it's kind of like they got the warm-up act down, beating up a lowly Kings, beating up on a beat-up Suns team with no Dylan Brooks and no Booker in that game, at least for a few seconds before he got hurt. So I think they got tune-up. They got some tune-up. They're on a roll. They're continuing the good flow from right before the All-Star break and carried it over until after. Harrison Barnes touched on that too. Now, you were there at the conference when I asked Barnes about, okay, well, what happened? Why did y'all take a while to put away the Kings? And he answered it honestly, but I think that was their biggest lesson learned from that Kings game is you got to play full power every single period. They didn't do that for a half versus Sacramento. They turned it on the second half and they put them away. You cannot do that versus the Pistons. I think they'd carry over that lesson from the Kings game into tonight's game versus Detroit. But there you have it, everybody. I got the Spurs picking up a W. Matt, you see on your screen, he's a little iffy on this one. He can see the Spurs lose. What do you think? You let Matt know on X at Matt GZMA, and let me know on X at Jeff G Spurs Zone. Hey, so we've been talking about the win streak, right? And this team is on fire right now. 8 straight games. I think the longest in the league. I believe, Matt, the longest this season just for their team as well. So they are humming. They are really, really going. And I look at this win streak, Matt. I'm wondering, okay, like what's going on? Why do you think they're winning? What does the eye test tell you when you look at this win streak? What is standing out for you?
I think it's pretty simple. We've always said that this team is going to go as Victor goes. Whether he's playing well or not playing well, it's going to be a huge factor in the success on a nightly basis for the Spurs. And I think, there was a lot of talk about it, obviously, because being in Austin, right, that's where we got the diagnosis last year. That's where, we find out that Victor is going to miss the remainder of the season. They're already dealing with the Greg Popovich stuff. And on top of that, it was a whole mess. I mean, they've dealt with so much from then to now, right? And so I think, all that dialogue about Victor and what he's learned and how he's grown from that experience has proven that, when he said at the beginning of the season that, he doesn't take life for granted anymore. He doesn't take anything that he's doing for granted anymore. He's ready to be healthy. Like he meant it, and all season long, he's shown, a new level of aggression. He's shown a great display of defense. I mean, teams are having to adapt their offensive game plan around him. He's not getting as many blocks because teams don't want him to get blocks. They're not trying him at the rim anymore. And
right.
That's obviously translated to wins. The Spurs have been able to to lock down some of the opponent's best scorers between Victor and Castle. And, it's the team is absolutely humming right now, like you mentioned earlier. And I think that's a big reason why they're winning 8 games right now. It's a big reason why they're sitting second in the West.
Yep.
And I just think that's what I'm seeing is that Victor is healthy. He's happy. He's in I think he's in the best shape of his career, and it's obviously showing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to look at some numbers here and see what the stats tell us here, Matt. And it's staggering in a good way, This team during their win streak, so that's the bubble we're working with, right? The 8-game win streak right now. That's all we're looking at. Second in the NBA in offensive rating at 124. But get this, Matt. They're fourth in defensive rating at 108.8. All because of perhaps a lot of what that guy has to do on your screen right there, the perimeter defense, and of course what this guy has to do in the interior and beyond. But their defense is just firing all cylinders. Their offense is firing all cylinders. A stark difference from, remember, was it like last month where they couldn't make any type of offensive move or field goal? They were just struggling. So in this win streak, they're getting it done offensively. They're getting it done defensively. By the way, good for a net rating of 15.2, Matt, third best in the NBA. They're not just winning. They're beating teams down. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flight tickets and the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. If you love futures, this is the time of the year. Whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds a little bit of extra layer to the excitement of every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future to get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s, self-employed forms, so you can just get to work on those deductions. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time offer, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, let's dig deeper. What about rebounding? Now, that's kind of one of the big issues I've had this season so far. We've seen this Spurs team lose a few games due to rebounding. But in the win streak right now, they're second in the NBA in rebound percentage at nearly 56%. They're first in the NBA in this win streak in defensive rating at 79.6. What about turnover percentage? There's a little bit of an issue. Now, they're not top 10. They're just outside of the top 10 at 13th in the NBA in the win streak with the turnover percentage of 14.1. You cannot do that tonight versus the Pistons. But blocks, they're the best team in the block percentage department in the win streak at 7.7. So, Matt, defensively, they're getting it done. Offensively, they're getting it done. This is what the numbers are showing in this win streak. But I want to ask you, though, Matt, and we could put away the numbers, as I just mentioned. Obviously, we're going to keep your eye test. But how much of that win streak right now we're seeing is because of that guy you see on your screen, Mitch Johnson? What do you think?
I love this question because, I feel like I see Mitch is fired just about every game, even if they win. I've debated for so long asking Mitch if he knows how many times he's been fired by the fans. That wouldn't go over very well. But, I actually wrote a big piece about this. I mean, Mitch Johnson has done an amazing job since taking over this role, and whether we want to quantify that as from the beginning of last season when he technically started being the head coach or acting head coach, or we want to keep it to just this season when he was officially, head coach Mitch Johnson. I mean, it's very clear that, him taking over for Popovich was an intentional decision by the Spurs. There's a reason that he got in the good graces of his predecessor, and there's a big reason that the Spurs have trusted in what he has to say. obviously there are going to be some things that he's had to iron out, some of his rotations. And obviously when you're dealing with injuries like the Spurs were at the beginning of the season, things are going to look a little funky because you don't have Victor, and then you don't have Castle, then you don't have Harper, and so I think obviously there's going to be some mess ups. There's going to be times where, maybe Mitch is throwing in Carter Bryant, Kelly Olynyk, and Lindy Waters a little early. And we're kind of sitting there wondering, what's going on here. But, what the Spurs have needed, especially as young as they are, comparatively speaking to some of the other teams across the league, what they've needed is a leader. And Victor has been that guy. De'Aaron Fox, trading for him last season, has kind of inserted another leader into the fold. Obviously, Harrison Barnes and Luke Cornett have championship experience. Right. But, what they've needed is somebody to be able to be even keeled on the sidelines and say, hey, like, we need you guys to be putting in the effort for 48 minutes. You need to embrace the boring, as he says all the time. You need to be fundamentally sound, as he says all the time. And I think it's very clear. I mean, when you look at a team and you say, hey, they're really well oiled, things are working well. They're looking great on defense. They're hitting shots on offense. I mean, that's a reflection of talent because the Spurs are part of it, but it's also just as much a reflection on the coaching. And this team is looked very put together, and all of that is because of Mitch Johnson and the game plan that he's executed, and the players' willingness to buy into that. It's clear that they trust him, and I think that that's all you need.
I think one move that has kind of pretty much coincided with the win streak, and I think was instrumental, is having that conversation with Harrison Barnes.
Right.
That it was time for him to go to the bench. And he did it willingly. He did like a pro. He was recently asked in Austin about that, and he didn't have any problems with that. That move, Matt, this is just staggering what Mitch Johnson did. So he replaces Barnes with Champagnie. So we're looking at the win streak right now. Obviously, that's the topic of this segment. This is what this unit has been doing since the move to push Barnes to the bench. So right now, the starting five they're going with is Castle, Champagnie, Fox, Vassell, and Wemby, right? All right, so your standard five that we've been seeing over the last eight games. Did you know, everybody, that unit is a plus 129 right now during this 8-game win streak? They have an offensive rating of 124, as mentioned, and a defensive rating of 108.8. That unit has been pretty much, the killer lineup. That's the unit you want to go out there. They played 384 minutes together in this win streak right now. Their pace is about 102.9, so again, 103. They're passing the ball around. They have an assist percentage, that starting five during the win streak, of 66% assist percentage and an effective field goal percentage of about 59%. And obviously they're 8-0. So talk to us about that move, shifting Barnes to the bench, inserting Champagnie, because that seems to have been kind of the switch that's gotten this team rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I were just talking about this, during the last game. Like it's almost felt like those two guys, Harrison and Julian, are very interchangeable. They're asked to do a lot of the same things, whether it's, just shooting a three, getting rebounds, playing defense, playing good enough defense to where, okay, if a guy goes by you, Victor's still set up back there, right? But it's such a minimal, a little move. Obviously Harrison has had his struggles this season shooting, and Julian has kind of been on the other end of that. He's really started to find a groove and be a very reliable, prove to be a very reliable shooter. And, just making that switch, it seems to have worked wonders, because obviously Julian is doing way more than asked. He's hitting his shots. He's getting rebounds. He's a willing passer at the same time. He can finish. When we just saw him throw down a one-handed dunk on a break, because he was in the right spot on defense to get a loose ball. And, I just think that's, to our earlier point, that's something that Mitch Johnson had to do. And he decided, hey, this is what's going to happen. And, like I was saying earlier, all it takes is the players buying in and being willing to say, okay, if that's what coach wants me to do, that's what I'm going to do. So that's obviously worked in their favor. And Julian has been a very great asset for the Spurs, and an easy person to plug in and say, okay, hey, you're in, and he's ready to take that call. And so I think that's really been integral to the success they found as of late.
Absolutely. Now, again, Matt and I were working with the frame of this 8-game win streak. All right. So keep that in mind for what I'm about to say. That's not to say during this win streak, Matt, that we obviously seen Barnes inserted with, the other starting four. So, with Fox and Vassell and Wemby going. All right. So this is how big of a drop off it is when you go from the new starting five to with Barnes. So during this win streak, a unit of Barnes, Champagnie, Fox, Vassell, and Wemby. All right. That is the second best unit during the 8-0 run right now, but it's a plus 25. Still wrecking shop. But compare that to Castle, Champagnie, Fox, Vassell, and Wemby, a plus 129. That's a significant drop off right there. No shade on Barnes, no nothing, but just saying how Mitch Johnson's vision of putting this current starting five together is working. Having that conversation with Barnes to go to the bench after decades of starting, that Iron Man that he is, and he accepted it, and he went to the bench. That's what you want out of a vet. It's helping the team win. That's all he cares about at W's, long postseason, and this unit may carry this team to a deep run. I mean, Matt, we looked at the eye test. We looked at some numbers. We put some starting five units out there. It's all coming together right now for the Spurs. Obviously, they got a big challenge tonight versus Pistons. We'll see if that continues. But even if it doesn't, I think Mitch has found the winning formula. What do you think?
I think so. And obviously fans are going to be very quick. I got fans again. They're going to be very quick to say, we need to trade Julian, or we need to cut Victor at the trade deadline next year. If things are going to, if they pick up a loss or two, but it's been very clear that this team has figured something out. We don't know what it's going to look like in the playoffs. I don't know how they're going to fare against a team like Denver or Minnesota, who's been there before, but when we're talking about right now in the 8-game streak and the wins that they've accrued as of late, they're moving differently than they have.
They are.
Has been there. They're getting rebounds. They're playing great defense. They're hitting shots. They're scoring when it matters most. They're throwing two-handed windmills during the middle of the game.
Yep.
Things are really working and really flowing with the Spurs right now. And, like what we're saying about Julian and Harrison, that's not to say that Barnes doesn't get back in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Stretch. Maybe Julian goes cold and Mitch says, hey, we need to make another change. But right now what they're doing is working. And, that's a credit to Mitch. That's a credit to the Spurs to buying in. And I mean, it's just proof that, this team is really finding its stride a lot earlier than expected,
Yeah.
And so whatever happens as they continue this rodeo trip, it's very clear that what we're seeing from them right now is pretty indicative of the kind of talent and the kind of wins that they can string together when things are working. And you only hope that can continue as the stakes get higher.
And I'm glad they're also humble about it, because they were asked after the game in Austin versus Sacramento about they're going to have a few tough games ahead now, starting tonight versus the Pistons. And all of them to a T that went up in that podium or table, conference room, they all said, we are aware of it. We know it's time. From Victor, talked about playing tougher opponents. Mitch recognizing that, the Pistons are going to be a test, and everybody else in between. They're all aware of it. So I'm glad they're not popping their collar, Matt, and flexing their muscles and, we got this, man, bring on Detroit. No, I think they have a little humility to know better than that. So you put it all together, and that's where you have an 8-game winning streak. And why, Matt? I'm thinking the Spurs get the W tonight. The numbers are staggering for the Spurs. So I feel confident. But, man, Matt, just don't text me to say I told you so. Just don't do that if they lose.
I'll try not to. I'll try my best.
He'll do it. He is Matt Guzman with Spurs on Sports Illustrated. Follow him on X at MattGZMan. Matt, tell us what you're working on over at your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'll continuing to travel along with the Spurs as they go. So I'll be up there for the 3 games against the Nets, Knicks, and Sixers. So you can look forward to that and full coverage there.
There you have it. Best way to follow Matt is on X at MattGZMan. Again, that's another Monday with Matt right here on Locked On Spurs. Oh, well, it's locked in now. So, Matt, it is official. You're back on your regular schedule program. By the way, we did predict this, right? Because you closed out last week on a Friday, and we said, we got a feeling he might show up to start the new week. And sure enough, Matt did it. Matt, thank you so much for joining us here on Locked On Spurs. Get better, buddy. Get better. I feel your pain, man. I'm just still coming off my cold, but I know it sucks. It is just the worst. So So get better, Matt. And again, we appreciate you. Everybody else, thank y'all for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available where we get podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, Ken's Bike, Plus app, YouTube. Go subscribe right now. Hey, let's talk about the Everydayer Club real quick. So you want Locked On Spurs ad free? Check. You want to hang out with a Discord channel with other Spurs fans? A premium access to that? Check. Yeah, you want to go check out the Locked On Everydayer Club. Go do that right now. You want to go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club. Go sign up. You have fun. You get pretty much like all access episodes of Locked On Spurs. You get, again, ad-free audio. I mean, the list goes on and on. Go sign up right now. Matt, thanks again for joining us here on Locked On Spurs. And everybody else, we thank y'all for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We'll be back tomorrow as the Spurs season continues. So for Mr. Matt Guzman, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.